Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here with another Market Watch episode. Today we're taking a look at some cards that are seeing play in various different decks, including both those that are meta relevant in topping, as well as others that are maybe considered to be a bit more rogue. This is really cool to see because even though we don't really have too many in-person tournaments at the moment, it means that the community is still looking to innovate and be creative. Whether that's through remote duels or other online platforms, it bodes well for the Yu-Gi-Oh community, and hopefully when events do start back up again, Yu-Gi-Oh will be back bigger and better than before. But for now, let's jump straight into today's Market Watch episode. To kick things off, let's take a look at Pot of Prosperity, a brand new card out of Blazing Vortex. So obviously this card was the most hyped card to come out of the set, and everyone knew that it was going to be an extremely expensive secret rare, with pre-sales for this card at around the $100 mark. And even though it still does carry that hefty price tag, we actually started to see this card fall just a bit. In fact, yesterday morning it was down at around $80 or so. Now, however, the card has quickly bounced back up and is sitting at $90 a piece. So moving forward, I personally think that this card is going to bounce back up to around $100. The card is a really big consistency boost for a lot of decks, as long as they have monsters in the extra deck that they can afford to banish. Also remember that it's really the only card that is carrying the entire Blazing Vortex set, so people aren't going to want to let the card go for very cheap. However, at the same time, you could argue that this card isn't a 3-of staple the same way that things like Pot of Extravagance or Pot of Desires are. You can get away with running just 2 copies, and of course there are some people that won't be playing the card at all. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me to see this card fall to $70 or $80, or even shoot up all the way to $120. It really just depends on the format and how much usage the card sees. It wasn't played in a ton of things this past weekend, but also remember that we're in the middle of a pandemic, so not everyone is able to go out to their locals and pick up a playset of a brand new card. Ultimately, I think that this card was underutilized compared to what its potential is, so I'm expecting it to bounce back as people get their hands on it and realize how much of a boost it can be for their decks. Next up, let's take a look at the Hidden City. So I think that the biggest surprise of the Remote Duel Invitational from over the last weekend was Subterror winning the whole event. They were definitely not considered to be a top tier contender going in. I think people were expecting it to be Drytron or Virtual World, maybe a slightly more obscure pick like Adamancipator Prank Kids or Dragon Link. However, it is Subterrors that won, splashing in the Dragoon package, which synergizes with the engine really well. Red Eyes Fusion just prevents you from summoning monsters for the whole turn, so you could summon Dragoon and then set Guru, and then you just sit on a ton of back row and win the game from there. Anyways, the Hidden City is obviously a key card for the strategy, as it's basically a Rhoda for the entire archetype. It also allows you to flip Guru face up, even after you've summoned Dragoon on the same turn, allowing you to search for a copy of Fiendus or Final Battle. Now, the Hidden City is actually a fairly difficult card to find because it has just 2 printings available, the original Secret Rare, which is up at $17 a piece, and the Super Rare reprint from Fist of the Gadgets, which is up at $11, and there are relatively few quantities of each available on the market. Now, the Secret Rare, as the highest possible rarity, has always been worth a decent amount, but the Super Rares used to be quite affordable at only $5 each. However, I believe that the card was a bit of a harder to pull Super Rare in Fist of the Gadgets, so there aren't actually very many quantities available on the market. Overall, I don't see the price of this card changing anytime soon. I wouldn't say that Subterror is a meta deck still, it feels like anti-meta, but it's probably going to continue to take the occasional top here or there if the pilot gets lucky. It also doesn't really feel like it's on Konami's radar at all, so I don't see either a banlist hit or any sort of reprint of this card coming anytime soon. I feel like there's not a lot to look at here. If you want to play Subterrors, this is probably the price you're going to have to pay for your copy of the Hidden City for quite some time, and I'm not expecting this price to change anytime soon. Another card related to that Subterror top that we saw, we have Summon Limit. So Summon Limit has been a somewhat relevant card for the last year or two, a really effective floodgate against combo decks like Virtual World and Drytron that can effectively end the opponent's turn early if they don't have access to any sort of back row removal. We're not seeing very many decks playing Twin Twisters or Cosmic Cyclone right now, so the card can be very difficult to deal with. This is a card that was main decked by the Subterror list that got first place, and even though it hasn't been used a ton this format, I think that this showing demonstrated just how oppressive the card can be. As a result, we've seen all versions of the card jump up in price. The commons used to be expensive before, they fell quite quickly after it received an ultra rare reprint in Battles of Legend Heroes Revenge, However, the Ultras are now up at $8 to $9 each, and so the commons have also bounced back up to around $3, and then of course we have the Duelist League colored rare versions that are around $10 each. I think that even though this card is good, it's only going to see play in those more rogue, control-oriented strategies like Sub-Terrors or the new Gravekeeper anti-meta deck. You can't run it in Virtual World or Drytron really, because it does affect both players, so if you flip it and your opponent outs your board, you could be locking yourself out potentially. There are a lot of different factors that could affect whether or not this card sticks around, such as a ban list, and whether or not decks adapt and we start seeing some sort of main decked back row removal more often. I wouldn't necessarily go out and pick up ultra rare copies of this card, since a single holo reprint would cause its price to plummet back down, but I would make sure that you have a set available to play with if you're planning on playing a more control oriented strategy, as this is a really solid side deck card. Now, speaking of control decks, one of the more interesting decks that we've seen recently is basically a Turbo Dragoon anti-meta deck, which focuses on getting out Red Eyes Dark Dragoon and some back row. Now, an important part of that engine is also getting out Necro Valley and potentially even using Royal Tribute to get rid of all monsters from your opponent's hand. We talked about Royal Tribute last week, but another piece that you guys might want to pay attention to is Gravekeeper's Commandant, which is basically 3 extra copies of Terraforming. Necro Valley is a card that shuts down a lot of decks this format, so naturally you run 3 copies of Commandant so that you can see it as early as possible. However, you can also revive Commandant with Gravekeeper's Headman and then go into a Link 2 monster, which is probably going to be Verte Anaconda, so that you can make Dragoon. Now, believe it or not, Commandant is actually a fairly difficult card to find. Obviously, its ultimate rare version is quite expensive at $65 to $70, but aside from that, it only has one other holo printing as an ultra rare from Legendary Collection Yugi's World, which is up at $12 a piece. The card does have a couple of different common printings as well as a rare, but all of those different versions are actually several years old, so you are looking at having to spend about $5 a piece for even the commons. If you happen to have these lying around, now is a great time to dig them out of your bulk and offload them while they are worth a few bucks. I don't know if Konami plans on giving us any more Gravekeeper support anytime soon, but I could definitely see this card being reprinted as an OTS tournament pack common or super if this deck starts to pick up any more traction. Next up, let's really quickly take a look at Ancient Gear Ballista, which is a card that I didn't think I would ever be talking about on Market Watch. Basically, this card is starting to get some attention because you use it as a combo piece in the Machina Infinitrack deck, as you can use it to search for Ancient Gear Box, who in turn searches for another combo piece out of the deck. Now, this isn't to say that this is a card that you guys should be picking up now or anything like that. I haven't seen the Machina Infinitrack deck do anything too crazy yet, though maybe it'll come out stronger after the upcoming March ban list. However, I do remember when my friends and I opened this set, we pulled so many copies of this card and we just threw them into bulk boxes, and now the card is actually worth like $2 each, whereas it was a quarter before, and that's kind of crazy to me. If I were you guys, I would dig this card up, keep a copy or two for yourself just in case the deck is good or in case you want to use them, and then offload the rest for whatever value you are able to get for them. Another one that's kind of out of nowhere, we have Cyber/Harpy Lady. So this is a card that came out in the Dragons of Legend Complete series, a product that wasn't really that heavily opened because it didn't contain any meta relevant cards. This card was an okay boost for the Harpy archetype, allowing you to bounce an opponent's monster when a spell, trap, or effect is activated, so at least it's a bit of a disruption. However, the real boost to the Harpy archetype came with all of the different Tri-Brigade cards announced in Phantom Rage and Blazing Vortex, as the deck can really make use of them now, since the archetype consists of entirely winged beast monsters. That's not to say that the deck is meta or anything crazy like that, but the deck I think is an interesting rogue choice now. They have some cute cards like Harpy's Hunting Ground and Harpy's Featherstorm, which is really devastating, and which can also be used to actually search for Harpy's Feather Duster now. Anyways, while it was looking like this set didn't contain any worthwhile cards early on, Cyber/Harpy Lady is actually now about a $15 card, whereas it was only $5 to $6 on release. In the Harpy Lady deck, I believe that this is a card that you do actually run 2 copies of, so you do need to pick up multiple copies if you want to play it. We should also keep in mind that Harpies are more of a fan favorite deck. Even if the deck isn't going to be top tier, there's still going to be casual players that want to pick up the deck anyways, and Cyber/Harpy Lady is a necessary extra deck piece. I wouldn't expect this card to go down or get reprinted anytime soon, since its release wasn't that long ago, I do think that long term, if this card goes long enough without a reprint, it will hit around the $25 to $30 mark, because it is the type of card that will just get eaten up off the market, and there wasn't enough of this set opened where enough copies will be relisted onto the market to bring this card's price back down. I guess that here we should really briefly mention Firewall Dragon. So of course we just had confirmed for us that Firewall Dragon will be receiving a Ghost Rare reprint in Ghost from the Past, so this means that the card will be receiving its errata text and get unbanned on the next ban list, which will probably be released in March. Of course, this is a pretty big nerf to the card and makes it not so broken. However, maybe the card will find a way to be useful in some sort of cyber strategy, maybe with the Adignisters or the Code Talkers or something like that. Anyways, because the Ghost Rares aren't also going to be Ultra Rares in Ghost from the Past, I think that the assumption is that Firewall Dragon is still going to be fairly difficult to find, as the only other printings of the card are secret rares. We have the originals from Code of the Duelist, which right now are about $13 for the Unlimited and $17 for the first edition, and then the Megaton reprints, which are about $8 each. Now, it's not the unerrated Firewall Dragon that we're going to be getting back in the game, right? So it's not like there's going to be a ton of people that are looking to pick up the card when it gets unbanned so that they can abuse it. However, the secret rares should still be cheaper than the Ghost Rare, so for those people that do want it, they'll probably be looking to pick up the secrets if they're on more of a budget. We did see a bit of this hype as well before when Firewall Dragon's errata was first announced over in the OCG, and I feel like this is a lesser wave of that. If you guys have copies of Firewall Dragon that you aren't particularly attached to, I would look at digging those out of your boxes and having them ready to trade for when the unbanning is officially announced. I don't think that you need to be in a huge rush to unload them, because the secret rare versions will still retain a significant chunk of their value, but do have them ready to meet whatever the demand for them is. Alright guys, the final card I want to talk about in today's episode is a card that I personally think is really worth picking up right now while it's still cheap, and that is Mythical Beast Jackal King. So we just had revealed to us the new Do Re Mi Chord archetype, which looks kind of interesting. To be honest, they feel like just another Pendulum deck, though they do have some pretty interesting on-theme cards. One important thing to note is that the new archetype doesn't place any restrictions on what types of monsters you can summon. And I think that Jackal King might actually be a really useful card. It provides monster effect negation, so Jackal King can be a card that allows you to easily play around Nibiru, which is one of the key ways that you can auto win against Pendulum decks. Jackal King is a generic card that you can bring out quite easily, and you can also run copies of Master Cerberus in order to search it out, which is really cool. Best of all, this card is quite cheap still. It's literally only a couple of dollars for the original ultra rare printing, or $1 for the super rare reprint. This is a card that was really expensive before it received its reprint because it was such an important card in Pendulum strategies, right? Because it's easy access to negation. Obviously, I don't know what the optimal Do Re Mi Chord build is going to look like, or if the deck is going to be meta or anything like that. But either way, I am expecting Jackal King to be a card that will shoot up in usage because of its usage in the deck, so I would definitely try to grab your copies relatively soon. Alright everyone, that is it for today's Market Watch episode. I do feel like the meta is getting a little bit stale. I feel like with Drytrons and Virtual World, 95% of each deck list is all the same stuff, so I guess that's why everyone gets so excited when something other than one of those two decks actually sees success. Hopefully, we'll be getting a ban list within the next couple of weeks that will address those two decks and shake things up. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's episode, please make sure that you hit that thumbs up button for me to let me know. Also make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think about the cards we talked about today, and let me know if there's anything else that I missed or maybe you guys want me to cover in a future episode so that I can keep all of you guys as informed about the market as possible. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.